right, everybody, we are back with another Ramp Careers Daily Update. Today, I am here with Mitch and Manoj, my co-founders. How you doing today, guys?
Doing well, Danny. Taco Tuesday.
Doing good, Danny. We're all just giggling here. We need to start this recording a couple minutes earlier so they can hear all your good jokes next time, Danny.
I'm pretty good. I moved to LA. I'm like laser focused on being a comedian now, just like my younger brother.
We need to get him on, Danny, in one of our updates. Really do.
I will. He's willing. He's for hire. Today we want to talk about something that has come up many times in our discussions with our fellows, and that is, how do you answer the question that comes up in nearly every interview? Why are you interested in the company you're interviewing for? We talked about it. We've got a good framework, a very simple framework for everybody. It's 4 parts. Talk about the industry level, talk about the problem, talk about the pain they're solving, and then talk about the intangibles. We're each going to dive into one of those sections and uncover why it's important to talk about them. I'll start with the industry level, guys. From a 10,000 foot view, it's important to start with the industry level. The way to answer that question is pretty simple, right? So Groupon was in the e-commerce space. Previous to Groupon, businesses had a really hard time getting distribution across e-commerce, specifically the SMB space. Groupon unlocked that for nearly every SMB across the entire country. I found that particularly interesting, and I was able to communicate my interest in Groupon because of the industry that they were attacking and because of the access they were giving SMBs to e-commerce. Manoj, I know you wanted to talk about the problem and the pain next. Tell me about that and how folks are answering that from this part of the framework.
That's a good segue into kind of looking at it from another dimension, right? So you've looked at it from an industry perspective. In Danny's example, e-commerce, and one way of answering it is I see a lot of growth in e-commerce. Small businesses don't have access to e-commerce, and now they do, and I want to be part of that wave. Right? So that's one dimension. The second dimension is this company solving a problem or a pain point that was not addressed historically, right? So is this a pain point that was ignored in the past, but now this company has decided to tackle it? That's interesting. That's exciting, right? Because you're trying to be a pioneer in finding solutions to challenges that have not been solved before. So look into it. See whether whatever the company's going after is a problem that's been historically underrepresented in terms of a range of solutions. Right. So that's dimension 2. Dimension 3 is sometimes you may have a business that is in an industry that's not necessarily new or novel. Maybe they're, going after an industry that's existed historically. For example, let's take Airbnb as an example, right? Industry. The hotels have existed, like hospitality and travel and tourism. That industry has existed for the longest time. So it's not like you can say, oh, this is a super exciting industry or a super new industry, right? The second thing is problem. People have been looking for affordable, accessible options to stay when folks travel, right? So that problem has been attacked from multiple perspectives by couchsurfing businesses, by hotels, by motels. So it's not like that problem is brand new either, right? People need to find an accessible and affordable place to stay. But what made Airbnb special was the way they solved the problem, right? Their solution to the problem was very new. They introduced a new form of supply and a distribution channel for that supply in a way that didn't exist before. All of a sudden, your bedroom could be technically a hotel. And they were able to deploy that particular solution at scale, widely, across a broad base of people. So in Airbnb's example, it's dimension 3 that makes them very special. It's not necessarily the industry of the problem, but the way they solve it. So ask yourself that question as you're going through the interview process and you go to a company's website and you look around, and typically one of those 3 dimensions should stick, right? There's a reason why a business exists. It's because they're doing something innovative in 1, 2, or 3, sometimes a couple of them, sometimes all of them. So that's 3 good ways of sorting out your own thoughts before you walk into an interview. And I think if you go through that exercise, you'll be in a much better place to demonstrate an interest in that particular company. And folks will appreciate your answer. It's a lot better than just coming up with something on the spot. And try not to, to the extent you can, speak in broad platitudes and say this is an exciting business or this is an amazing company. It doesn't mean anything. Better than just like being quiet and staring at them. But if you can go through that exercise, and you'll feel more confident about your own knowledge and awareness of what that company is doing. And then Mitch, going back to you, one of the things that you had mentioned was the intangible piece, and I think it's important. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is really the area where you can touch on a couple of the things that makes this company special. So what we're talking about here is the culture, it could be the size of the company, it could be the access, to leadership at the company. My advice here is put some meaningful thought into the types of conversations you've been having along the whole interview process, and pick out a couple of the things that really stood out to you, a couple of things that make it special to you, and you want to genuinely talk about those when you answer this question. So a couple examples here. It could be the culture of the company. And what that means is maybe it's the family type atmosphere that you get when you're in, or that you've had when you've been walking around the office, or when you've been in these interviews with various team members. It could be maybe if you're joining a small company, a startup, it could be, hey, I'm really excited to have access to, to the CEO, to the C-suite. I'm excited to work hand in hand with the VP of sales on developing this process out further. If it's a bigger company you're joining, maybe it's, I'm really excited about all the enablement and the training that I'm going to get right out of the gate. Maybe this is your first job, and that's really, really meaningful to you. All those things are great to talk about. I think what you can do is, let's say it's your very first step in the interview process. You may not have all of those thoughts right away, but maybe you talk to somebody beforehand. Maybe you have a friend that works there. There's probably some things you can glean online by looking at their website, by looking at their LinkedIn page. Just do some research and you can start to pick up on a couple of cues. And then as you're going through the interview process, just keep in mind whatever is important for you and continue to look out for them, and then bring them up throughout the interview process. As someone who's been on the other side of the table as an interviewer, I love to hear that feedback from the interviewees as we're going through the process. What's getting them excited? What are they looking forward to in the interview? That's what I'd say for the intangibles. I think for all of this, I think we all touched on it, but make sure that you practice this pitch or practice this talk track before you step into the interview, right? Collect your thoughts a couple of days prior. List out some of the industry, some of the problems, pains, culture, or intangibles that you want to talk about, so that you've formulated that prior and you're not just rambling for 10 minutes when you get into the interview.
Great thoughts. I think we nailed it. It's really 4 key parts to a framework on how to answer the question that you are guaranteed to get in every interview. Why do you want to work for company X? The 4 things: 1, industry level; 2, identify why you connect with the problem; 3, notice if they are solving a pain in the same way but building a better mousetrap, but they're coming up with an entirely new way to solve a pain; and then 4, the intangibles. Always important to be mindful and thoughtful around your answer with the intangibles, the fluffy stuff, the culture stuff, the reason that you'll stay at a company. This has been a great discussion, guys. I'm glad we focused and were able to move our way, make our way from our future as stand-up comedians all the way back to tactical stuff that will help our fellows and others ace their next interview. For Danny, Mitch, and Manoj, this has been another Ramp Careers Daily Update. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
You guys.